Thank you, Secretary of State, and let me add my own welcome to our second annual conference. 15 months have passed since we gathered at Rousseau Whitehall for the inaugural Strategic Command Conference, and it's been a seminal period for defence and for Strategic Command in particular. None of us could have imagined what those 15 months had in store. COVID-19 dominated every aspect of our lives, and defence was no exception. Now, we're going to spend much of today focused on the future, but it would be wrong not to dwell briefly on the pandemic and call out the remarkable work that sometimes goes unsung in Strategic Command. Defence Digital enabled secure remote working extraordinarily quickly and effectively. Defence Support was central to the procurement of PPE and rapid distribution of vital medical supplies. Defence Intelligence provided critical medical intelligence to the heart of government decision-making, and our overseas bases, remote and cut off for sustained periods of time, managed the risk with extraordinary skill and discipline and supported stretched local medical infrastructure. But I want to, in particular, shine a light on the Defence Medical Services, who've been fully mobilised and embedded on the front line of the NHS for 14 months. Consultants, doctors, nurses, combat medics, paramedics, medical support staff, and carers. They've done no more or less than their NHS colleagues, but their skills, military and medical, have been vital. They shun the limelight and they claim no credit or recognition, but I want to pay tribute to them, to recognise the burden they've borne, the sacrifices they've made, the suffering and grief they've witnessed, and to thank them as publicly as I can. I'm immensely proud of them all. The pandemic's been a global tragedy, but from every fight we draw lessons, and the pandemic's been no different. And I want to pick out three. First, it's highlighted the importance of national resilience, and in particular our reliance on cyberspace as a domain. The internet has been a lifeline for many during lockdown, but it's also been a conduit for disinformation, fraying the bonds of society, the seams of alliances, and undermining the workings of democracy, including our healthcare responses, all fueled by digital authoritarians. Just in the last few months, cyberspace has been the vector for espionage, from SolarWinds, which was attributed to Russia, the Finnish Parliament attributed to China, the crippling of US national infrastructure through ransomware attacks, and chillingly on the Irish National Health Service in the midst of the pandemic, both attributed to Russian cyber actors. Now, the UK is ranked by the Harvard Kennedy School Belfer Center as one of the world's 3 leading cyber powers. The record investment in the integrated review reinforces that. I want to underscore just how critical this will be in strengthening our cyber resilience and growing our ability to project power in cyberspace and to establish norms of responsible behaviour in cyberspace. We will never be complacent. As a key priority, I and my partner in GCHQ, Jeremy Fleming, urgently need the nation's cyber and digital talent, part-time or full-time. And these cyber warriors will be as vital to our defences as an F-35 pilot, a special forces operator, or a submariner, and in contact with the enemy more frequently and persistently than any of them. Secondly, the pandemic's reminded us of the advantage conferred by being at the leading edge of science and technology. Now, our world-leading ability to conduct gene sequencing, identifying new variants of the virus, and developing effective and deploying effective vaccines has literally meant the difference between life and death for tens of thousands of us. But as well as highlighting the opportunity, it also demonstrates the peril in falling behind in the race to develop and exploit emerging and disruptive information age technologies. And we're confronted by a real technological tsunami, of which the most consequential include biotech, quantum technology, microelectronics and semiconductors, robotics, and 5G. But the most significant, the first among equals, is artificial intelligence. Why? Because it is a new knowledge and reasoning system. It will be both foundational and an accelerant to every other field of emerging technology. It will become a pervasive and therefore a decisive technology. Now, we're not alone in making this assessment. In 2017, President Putin said that the nation that leads in AI will rule the world. China in particular is pursuing superiority in AI. Why does it matter to defense? Well, as Eric Schmidt, the former chairman of Google, testified to Congress recently, defending against AI-capable adversaries without employing AI is an invitation to disaster. AI will compress decision timeframes from minutes to seconds, expand the scale of attacks, and demand responses that will tax the limits of human cognition. Human operators will not be able to defend against AI-enabled cyber or disinformation attacks, drone swarms, or missile attacks without the assistance of AI-enabled machines. Even the best human operator cannot defend against multiple machines making thousands of maneuvers per second at hypersonic speeds and orchestrated by AI across domains. Humans cannot be everywhere, but software can. It can augment human capability and can have enormous benefits. It can defend society and bureaucracy. It can enable operational advantage and remove humans from harm's way. Now, we're not starting at a low base. In 2019, the UK was ranked third after the US and China in the global AI index. But that ranking conceals a huge gap in a winner-takes-all competition where first mover advantage is everything. The IR and the Defence Command paper both cite AI as a strategic priority, and 1,000 narrow AI flowers are blooming across defence. But we have not mobilised this at the pace and scale needed. Now, we're putting the fundamentals in place, beginning with an AI strategy to be published this summer, and it will be guided by three main principles. First, we'll adopt and exploit AI for defence at scale. Secondly, we'll catalyse and strengthen the UK defence and security ecosystem for global leadership. And third, we'll shape the global development of AI to support security, stability, and democratic values. For Strategic Command, this begins with the establishment of a Defence AI Centre this year as part of a wider digital ecosystem across defence that we call the Foundry. And forgive me if I unashamedly get a bit techno, but the technology and the terms matter. It will begin by integrating existing digital technologies now. So, for example, using machine learning and automation to support intelligence analysis. It will be enabled by improving our digital infrastructure, the digital backbone, with a data strategy that enables data curation, data sharing, and data exploitation, cloud services at secret and above secret, and a common network architecture. It will lead to investing in more S&T in partnership with DSTL and to experimentation to ensure responsible development of AI and autonomous systems. Above all, it must mean building a talent pipeline with a defence digital service and a digital academy with career fields in software development and data science. A career management system will nurture these rare talents across defence, as well as growing a base of junior leaders in digital skills and computational thinking. And the third lesson from the pandemic relates to this last point. As a society, whether in government, corporations, or as individuals, we've adapted to the enforced changes brought about by lockdown at a pace that challenges all our previously conservative assumptions about how agile our organizations can be. It shows that bold and radical change can be adopted and absorbed in our stride. Decisions in government that would normally have taken months or years were decided and implemented in hours. This rapid decision-making is only routinely seen during times of great crisis, such as war. But this culture and mentality must become habit. We must be daring and entrepreneurial because the threat is moving towards us and the technological advantage away from us. I want to turn now to the theme of this conference, integration. And as the Defence Secretary pointed out, 2 of the 3 seminal related documents published this year contain integration in the title. And last month in Honolulu, the US Secretary of Defense, Lloyd Austin, described a concept of integrated deterrence, echoing 3 of the principal conclusions of the integrated operating concept and the Defence Command paper. First, as the CDS has said, if you're up against rivals who seek to win without fighting, you cannot afford to be passive. In other words, you have to compete below the threshold of war to deter war and to prevent your adversaries from achieving their objectives in fait accompli strategies like Crimea and the South China Sea. Second, and hence my earlier comments on AI, our ability to innovate and develop a competitive edge in emerging disruptive technologies will be fundamental, which is why sustaining strategic advantage through science and technology is integral to the strategic objective in the IR. And third is that our ability to deter above and below the threshold of conflict will rise and fall on our ability to achieve integration of the levers of national power across the 5 operational domains and alongside allies. But the key question we should be asking ourselves today is who and what are we seeking to deter? Today's first panel session will explore this, but let me offer a trail. In his confirmation hearing to the US Congress as long ago as 1993, the CIA Director James Woolsey characterized the threat as being composed of dragons and snakes. Both are still with us, only the dragons are more powerful and malign, and the snakes are more prolific and diverse. Sometimes they act in concert. Some snakes cannot be deterred. They have to be suppressed or disrupted. And this is why we'll still maintain cutting-edge counterterrorism capabilities in our special operations forces. Other snakes, like the Wagner Group, for example, or malicious cyber actors, are used as proxies by the dragons. The largest dragons in this metaphor are China and Russia. Russia is the acute and most menacing threat. The Defense Secretary described it as the #1 threat to the UK just this Sunday. China is very different, a global power, a strategic rival, and in some areas, we hope, a strategic partner. But our ability to manage this strategic rivalry requires the same tools of deterrence, modulated and applied to these dragons in different ways. And foremost among these is our ability to orchestrate our levers of national power in a dynamic and persistent fashion to contest the strategies both rivals are using against us. Now, these strategies have been given a variety of labels: hybrid warfare, liminal warfare, grey zone, sub-threshold, the list's extensive. But they all describe the same essence. George Kennan captured this best in his famous telegram from Moscow in 1948. He used the term political warfare, which he defined as the logical application of Clausewitz's doctrine in times of peace. In broadest definition, political warfare is the employment of all the means at a nation's command, short of war, to achieve its national objectives, to further its influence and authority, and to weaken those of its adversaries. Kennan captured the weakness in our own approach, which still persists today. He wrote, "We've been handicapped, however, by a popular attachment to the concept of a basic difference between peace and war, by a tendency to view war as a sort of sporting contest outside of all political context." Now, it's not as if we don't recognize this. The comprehensive approach and fusion doctrine are both attempts better to integrate the levers of national power. And it's not as if we historically haven't had the right strategic culture. We have levers of national power that in each field rank among the most influential and extensive of any in the world: diplomatic, economic, legal, development, intelligence and security and defense. But our historically strong strategic culture has atrophied since the end of the Cold War, and it needs to be rekindled. In some areas, we do this well. Our larger embassies overseas can be exemplars of an integrated approach, responding dynamically to threats and opportunities and giving us significant influence and purchase. And the National Cyber Force is in many ways the perfect expression of the power of combining the different capabilities and operational cultures of government arms, the marriage of GCHQ, the MOD, SIS and DSTL, working to strategic priorities from the National Security Council, is proving very potent. But it's also fair to say that we have further to go in adapting the strategic machinery to the persistent and dynamic campaigning across Whitehall that the IR demands. We know it responds well in a crisis, as it did following the poisoning of Sergei Skripal on British soil. But it has yet to demonstrate it can campaign persistently and dynamically. The second facet of integrated deterrence is our ability to combine effects across all domains and all levels of warfare to create, find, and exploit unprotected vulnerabilities and pose multiple dilemmas. And if needed, to have the ability to impose cost in another domain entirely to the one an adversary is contesting. This is multi-domain integration, the precise role that Strategic Command was established to lead and enable, whereas each of the services exists to conduct operations within their physical domains, we exist to conduct operations across and beyond them. That's why the command holds the capabilities that allows defense to sense, understand, orchestrate, and enable effects across domains. There's no ready template for multi-domain integration, and I have no easy answers, hence why we've drawn you together today to draw on your collective expertise and insight as we explore this further in the second panel. But we do know that our ability to develop the necessary expertise will hinge on a number of things, and I want to touch on these. First of all, we will need to experiment and adapt as we harness new technology and new techniques. The hardware won't change between now and 2025, but the software will, and our ability to exploit data with AI, establish a single information environment, and extend our reach in cyberspace will allow us to push the boundaries of MDI with innovation and agility. We've established a formal program of experimentation under Air Marshal Windy Gale, our new DG, Director General Joint Force Development. But the most valuable lessons will come from operations. And here we have an inherent advantage with our special forces and PGHQ situated in the command. They are our vanguard and are already practicing multi-domain integration, combining effects through cyberspace and space with platforms and maneuver by air, land, and sea to achieve cognitive and physical effects, overt and covert, in partnership with other government departments. It's happening on CSG 21, orchestrated by PGHQ, and it's happening on special operations. Secondly, we need to change how we develop and field capability. The real source of military advantage lies less in platforms. It lies in our ability to sense, understand, and orchestrate in the kill chain, as Christian Brose colourfully described it in his book of the same name. The sensor networks, the data, the processing, exploitation, and dissemination, and the effectors, kinetic or non-kinetic. But our requirements process is geared towards the acquisition of platforms, not to the networks that enable rapid decision-making across all levels of power. It's slow, and we have a tendency to be impervious to disruption, lagging behind. We need to incentivize industrial partners by refreshing capabilities constantly, develop strategic partners, including with small and medium-sized enterprises, and develop a two-speed acquisition system that's fit for software, for DevSecOps, for minimum viable propositions, and with greater appetite for risk. The Permanent Secretary is determined to unlock this in support of the Defence Secretary, and you can press him on this in the final session. The third, MDI will require a cultural shift, as the Secretary of State said, across defence. We're still largely and recognisably a tri-service organisation. Coordination across the services is still more of an afterthought than a reflex. We don't provide joint education until around the 15 to 20 year point in someone's career, yet expertise in multi-domain integration will be needed at every level, including the most junior. Our approach in managing rare talent and skills that are needed across domains is still stovepiped, though our approach to managing cyber talent offers a model for how to change this. Promotion and reward occur based primarily on how well you perform in your service, with service in joint, perhaps soon to be integrated, posts of less import. An occasional paper published by RUSI and authored by Trevor Taylor and Andrew Curtis reminded us that as far back as 1964, Generals Pug Ismay and Ian Roberts advocated for greater integration in the MOD and between the services than we see now. It's hard to avoid the conclusion that the requirement to develop expertise in MDI provides even more of an imperative now than it did then. And I really welcome some of the fundamental reforms to our personnel strategy that are being pursued. I haven't spoken about integration with allies and partners. I've chosen not to, partly because we have such excellent representation from the United States and our colleagues in NATO on the panels, but mainly, and as the Secretary of State said, it seems self-evident to me that the true source of our deterrent strength comes from the alliance and from our close bilateral relationships with partner nations. That integration and the values we share and the respect for the rules-based international system are what distinguish us from the dragons and the snakes. At our inaugural conference last year, I described the priorities I had for the integrated review: cyber, intelligence and understanding, special operations, and multi-domain integration, and how they come together in Strategic Command to strengthen our deterrence and our competitive edge. These now lie at the heart of the integrated review outcome. We've been given the resources and the responsibility to lead the transformation of defence for the information age. We've now got to deliver. Thank you.